This is the Joe Mullins Show, showcasing the vibrant spirit of Florida and America's innovative creators. This is the place for captivating conversations, inspiring guests, and industry professionals celebrating the best place in the world to live, shop, work, and play. And now, your host, County Commissioner, entrepreneur, and freedom advocate, Joe Mullins.
Hello, Florida. This is Joe Mullins of the Live, Work, Shop, Play Show, and welcome to the show. And we are at the excited time of the year. We are at football season, and the big games are about to kick off. Next week's going to be some of the biggest that you see. It's a very exciting time of the year, and I couldn't think of a better person to come on with me and talk about this than Dr. David Chow, who is an orthopedic surgeon. Dr. Chow, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Now, you actually have some history with football that our listeners, you've been on the show before. We talked before it was ever a podcast, because now it's a whole different show. We can't just be in the house or the bedroom or wherever I just jumped out of the shower and I'm going to talk on the show. It's now a legit podcast and video, which has gone crazy with Salem Media, and I want to thank Salem and all of our other affiliates that do it. But you have some NFL background, so let's talk about that. With the San Diego Chargers, the team doctor, I used to see you every Sunday on the field. Let's talk a little bit about that.
This is not a backdrop. You're catching me between cases in the OR here, and this getup is authentic. But yes, I was former head team physician for the San Diego Chargers, the youngest head team physician ever, and had some good times for those 17 years. And just a couple weeks ago, got a great reminder in Canton for the Hall of Fame induction of tight end Antonio Gates. And it was great to see a lot of friends. And he even was kind enough to give a nice shout out from his enshrinement speech, thanking the medical guys, including myself, et cetera. So it's been fun to have done that chapter of life, and now with continued work and then kids and then more football stuff, different kind of football stuff. I'm sure we'll get into that.
Yeah, I tell people, a doctor like you is like to a football player is like a auto mechanic, the head mechanic to a race car driver. You put your life and you put your whole performance in the hands of that individual. And when that car has a problem, it comes back in, and your goal and that mechanic's goal, or that the chief car guy or whatever, I can't think of the name you call him, his goal is to get them back out on that field and going as quick as they can. And that's something that you did. I remember us meeting. We met with, of course, the late, great Junior Seau, one of the greatest linebackers or football players in general that played the game on and off the field. But you kept Junior. It's always funny because he always said, he keeps my body together. He keeps me put together. He said, if my arm flies off, he'll put it back on for me and I can go back out there and do it. So you're a key person. That career is so crucial and key for that individual.
Well, and it's a team, right? It's not one mechanic. I happen to be, quote, the head mechanic, but when you roll into a pit stop, right, you see all the guys. And so there's a lot of athletic trainers, physical therapists, and other specialists that are all there. But you do try and keep them going as soon as you can. It's interesting you say the auto mechanic. First of all, I joke around sometimes when I'm in private life. If someone says, "What do you do for a living?" and still, it's not. I'm not trying to get into I'm a doctor, name drop, and this, that, the other. I'll say I work at a body shop, and and there's some truth to that. And then, but the other analogy I always got for what we did in sports medicine, and I would tell all the fellows I would train this, it's like racing an Indy car, right? Anyone can go 200 miles an hour on the straightaway, push hard to get someone back, and anyone can slow down to make the turn. And in sports medicine, the key is, when is it safe to speed up? When do you need to slow down? And when do you need to accelerate out of the turns? You're not winning a race if you don't slow down coming into a turn when there's trouble ahead, because you're going to slam into the wall. And you're not winning a race if you don't step on the gas coming out of a turn to speed up acceleration when things are getting to the clear. You can't wait till the straightaway to do that. So I've used some of those car analogies over time myself as well.
Now, Dr. Chow, you also worked in the X Games, and you did some stuff there where you had a lot of guys. I mean, X Games, you're talking about injuries. I mean, those guys are just next to the extreme jackass shows where they're going out and doing stuff that you see them.
That's where it started from, right? Those guys, they're all friends, and there's some overlap there.
Yeah.
Some of the jackass guys. But this weekend, I drove up to L.A. with my son, went to a Dodger-Padres game. And we passed Home Depot, Carson. And at one point, I told him the story, and he was amazed that the X Games and the Chargers were there at the same time. The Chargers had training camp at Home Depot up in Carson, while part of the X Games was in Carson. So I was chief medical officer for ESPN and their X Games. So early morning, it would be Charger practice. And then in the same facility, mid-afternoon, it would be all these X Games things. Then there'd be another second Charger practice in the afternoon and back to X Games in the evening with motorcycles and backflips. And what was amazing is the locker rooms, they could kind of see each other as they crossed. All the X Game athletes were, this is amazing. These football players are huge and oh my gosh and all this stuff. And meanwhile, the football players were telling me, these guys are amazing. They're doing backflips and double backflips on motorcycles and so forth. And I got asked a lot, what is harder? What is the more brutal sport? Is it X Games with all the crashes, or is it football? And my answer was, hard to say. They're different. The difference is in football, every single play ends in a collision, like with a tackle, with a block, with something, right? So every single play has contact, and it's coming from all different sides. However, in X Games, the goal of every single play is that you ride away, and there's no injury whatsoever. There's no contact. And in some ways, it's choreographed. So football is, battlefield from all sides, and every play has contact and a hit. X Games is choreographed, and you ride away and everything is fine until you don't. So I would say the crashes and the injuries in X Games are more spectacular, but the play-to-play, day-to-day moment, the football players have it worse, if that makes any sense.
Now, Dr. Chow, you have, and I guess this stemmed out, I've gone to games on the weekend. We've gone to the Super Bowl together. We've gone to a lot of great events. And it's amazing because anytime I mention your name or we come in together, people go, oh, Dr. Chow, he's a legend. And they trust you so much. But you have to trust your doctor. I mean, if you don't trust your doctor, you got problems. So you got to trust your doctor. It's always fun going with you. But one of the things I enjoy doing with you the most is watching these games and seeing an injury. And I'd look over at you and I'd go, what happened? Is he okay? And you would describe it and you would say, Joe, this has happened. He's twisted his knee. He's out. He's done. He's going to be gone. And it was always 100% accurate.
Well, I don't know about 100, but like we've shown that we're over 95% accurate by video. And how that happens is during my 17 years in the NFL, I would always know exactly what the injury was because I saw the guy on the field, on the sideline, in the locker room the next day after an MRI. But I usually had about 20 or 30 minutes to kill before meeting with the GM upstairs. So everyone in an NFL building looked at film. So I figured I should look at film. And there were times when I would ask a player, what happened? I don't know. I have to go back and look at the film. And so I would have the answer. I would know exactly what the diagnosis was. And then I would go back, and the video guys, Brian Duddy and company, were so nice in cutting the video for me. TV copy, sideline coach's film, end zone coach's film. And we put together how the injury happened. So I reverse engineered it. I knew what the answer was, and the question was the collision or the tackle or whatever the injury on video. Now I'm with TV and all the different 17 cameras in a game and different angles. The views are pretty good. And so from the video of the injury, I get a pretty good idea of what the diagnosis is. So we're making injury impressions, not diagnosis, because I'm not examining them now. And we've shown we're 95% accurate. And as a result of that, we do injury analysis at Sports Injury Central. And here's the latest thing the guys told me to push and say. Everyone else is Adam Schefter, Ian Rappaport. They're great, but they're doing injury reporting. The team said, the coach said, the agent said. We're doing injury analysis. Sean McVay may say, oh, Matthew Stafford's fine. It's day to day at the beginning of these training camps. And we said, no, that's more week to week. It's a nerve issue at best. because he's getting epidural steroids. So we do injury analysis is what we do. And the guys say we're the only site that is endorsed by Billy Walters, the greatest gambler of all time. Bill Belichick was just on the podcast a few weeks ago, and he loves what we do, greatest coach of all time. And they said the shout out from Antonio Gates, the Hall of Famer. So we're probably in a very unique world working in what we do. And with injury advantages across 5 years, the latest number is against the spread, 56.5%. Just looking at injuries. We're not looking at, do you like Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson and the Chicago Bears? We're looking at, we assume that the lines take care of the point spreads, take care of the advantages from a coaching and player and talent perspective. We're looking this week what the injuries are, per se. For example, down in Tampa, obviously they lost their left tackle, their best player, Tristan Wirfs. There's a couple other injuries along the O-line. And, of course, the wide receiver core is completely injured right now. Chris Godwin's still not back yet. And Jalen McMillan with his neck and issue. And Mike Evans with age. And so we look at that, and we'll look at, for example, the Miami Dolphins, their rush ends and linebackers. Yes, they just signed Matthew Judon, but they still are coming off of injuries, and they've been decimated by injuries, including deep at the DB side of the ball, as well as new offensive linemen. So we give an injury score to each team and then have an algorithm, and it sort of spits out the line should be 4.5 and it's 3, so it makes it a play or what have you.
Yeah, that's what I was going to talk about. So, back then when you started in the industry, you saw a lot of injuries that were career-ending. With evolution and involvement, you've now there are injuries that, like a torn hamstring, or not a torn hamstring, a ACL. ACL used to be typical to knock a person out of a career. You now can repair that, put them back on place, and they're playing better than they were before. So we've seen a lot of technology advantage in the medical industry, but you're talking about the television and then watching this. How big are the injuries, and how do you see the ones that were career-ending now being nothing more than just a game or two, and now they're back up going?
Well, I mean, there's no question. There's no question that where there's been a lot of advances, but there's also been a lot of injuries. And as I always say, I think there's an increase in some of the injuries nowadays because as players are bigger, faster, stronger, the play-to-play collisions have more impact and force. And as you're big, one thing that people have talked about a lot is, foot or ankle injuries, the Achilles tendon injuries, be it in basketball and football and so forth. But here's the little secret. An NFL player's Achilles tendon isn't necessarily bigger or thicker than mine, right? And so you continue to, using your race car analogy, putting a more and more horsepower on the same frame, the same suspension, planting a bigger tree in the same size pot. Your foot doesn't get bigger as you train more. Your Achilles doesn't get bigger. Your ACL doesn't get bigger. So there is a balance of technology and rehab and techniques and surgical techniques getting people back. But there's a counterforce, which is bigger, faster, stronger, and more injuries and bigger and worse accidents. So technology's better, but then injuries. So they kind of continue to, you're trying to be ahead of the game of injuries, but it's a struggle because these players are bigger, faster, stronger, no question about it.
Now, I got to ask you this, too. Back in the day, teams loved to hide injuries. You don't want to talk about a Tom Brady. Certainly Tom Brady, great quarterback. Tampa, we're live here in Tampa, so we're going to talk about the Bucs. Jacksonville, one of our other affiliates. Of course, Orlando with their other leagues that they have, and then Miami. But all across the country where we podcast the great teams, when you talk about a great player like Tom Brady or whoever, but Tom Brady with an injured shoulder is a different scenario. Now that's different odds. How do teams feel about your podcast and your showing? And we're going to talk about that now because you with betting. I love to bet. I'm going to go, God, I got to watch Dr. Chow for a little bit because I don't want to bet on this undefeated team if Tom Brady's injured and Tom Brady's not going to be playing. So it's going to be a different team. How do the teams like your podcast and your show versus, because you can't hide the injuries like you could?
Well, I'm not sure they love it, to tell you the truth. In Miami, I think it was last year, we had Mike McDaniel opening a press conference and was asked a question about my thoughts about his cornerback Jalen Ramsey's return from meniscus repair, because I was more dubious than what the team and the player were saying about when he would return. And literally in the press conference, he was asked a question about what I was saying. And here's the funny part. I would have thought he would have said, I don't know. I talk to our team doctors. All I know is what we say. That's what I would have thought he would have said. But instead, he was actually prepped, and he knew exactly what the reporter was talking about. The PR guy prepped him, and he said, and he commented on it. And he said, yeah, outside doctors are fine, but we just listen. He acknowledged it. So I think they do hear it. There's no question the PR guys follow what we're saying here. I know that the Eagles follow, the Rams, a lot of teams follow it. They may not like it. Injury reporting is not specific. Remember, let's say Tom Brady, all you have to do is shoulder, body part, and questionable. That's all you have to do. Now, for a quarterback, you have to say right shoulder or left shoulder. But any other player, it's just foot. That's it. Or knee. That's it. You don't need to say. And questionable means 1% chance of playing, 99% chance of playing, right? It's a wide variation. And even if a player plays, how well. And that's kind of what we look at and what we do. I will say the opposite has been a surprise. Coaches may not like it. GMs may not like it. Teams may not like it. I've been pleasantly surprised for the most part. Jalen Ramsey didn't like it when I talked about it. But for the most part, players do like it. Because the team it's coach speak is real. Their job is to hide injuries and not give advantages to the other team. And if I give the real story, there's Mitchell Schwartz once told me at a Super Bowl, right tackle. I went up to him and I said, I know your brother and, Jeff, another NFL lineman. And I told him who I was. He goes, I know who you are. And I was like, oh, should I get up from this table and you're going to hit me? This is at a Super Bowl media session. And he goes, no, I actually appreciate what you said. I said, oh, really? I said, look, the Chiefs knew that my injury was 6-8 weeks in length, but it kept getting put out as day to day. So after week 3, fans are like, why aren't you back? Why aren't you back? But I couldn't say anything as the player. The team was, putting out what they were putting out. I couldn't go against them. But I was kind of made to look bad to fans. So I appreciated what you were saying, that this is a 6-8 week injury, et cetera. So there's been some unique experiences off of it. And there have been times, for example, Odell Beckham, I commented on him running when he was coming back from ACL, and we ended up in a dialogue. At first, he didn't like what I was saying, and once I explained it, he understood and said, yes, my stopping and cutting is not there. Yes, I'm running okay, but you're right about this, that, the other. And we ended up being, quote, pen pals and text friends. I
don't think anybody likes hearing what their doctor's saying when it's bad news or with something you don't want to hear. I know I didn't like mine. I didn't like you telling me when my finger surgeries and stuff, oh, this is going to happen. I was like, no, it's not going to happen that way, or my knee. But I did trust you with it, and it worked out well. And here I am at 55, and I'm still moving around and mobile. So I like that.
What number? What number? Special number, 55.
55, yeah. And what's ironic, I was at Hulk Hogan's funeral a few weeks ago, and I saw the old wrestlers, and they're walking around crippled, and they're moving. And I thought to myself, God, if they'd have just had a doctor like you in that industry.
Let me tell you about WWE stuff. I used to work a lot with WWE, be a ring physician for them when they came to town, and I know the sport very well. So my background, it's actually really interesting. The 4 things that I've done the most of. Yeah, I've done baseball and basketball, but they're less collision sports. Worked with the Bulls, with the Minnesota Twins, the Cubs, et cetera. But here's the thing. Football, NFL football, right? Rugby, World Cup and Olympics, X Games, we talked about the trauma. And the other one is WWE. Now, here's the thing. It's no secret. The action is scripted, but the action is real, right? And here's the thing that people don't realize. When you see the TV show, they have dark shows, TV shows, and then the pay-per-views. For the dark shows, and I may get the schedule wrong depending on the TV. If the TV show is on Tuesday, there is a dark show Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and sometimes Monday. They're doing the same routine, double backflip off the top rope and slamming down. they're doing the same athletic endeavor multiple times before the TV show, almost as practice. So they are beat up because they do what they do almost on a daily basis. And it's not always in purview of media and public because there are those dark shows that they do that are not televised, and they are real. One time, and this is true, I won't say who, but the guy says he's getting cut over the forehead. And literally, they take a razor blade, take aspirin, and he's got a cut over his forehead. And when I looked, I said, well, you need to sew this up now. I'll just glue it and steri strip it. He goes, you can look at it if you want. Look at it. And he's got 3 other cuts on his forehead. I'm like, what is that? Oh, that was from Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Today's Sunday.
Crazy. It's crazy stuff.
Yeah. So a lot of respect for the wrestlers. Everyone says, oh, it's fake. It's fake. It's scripted. It's not fake. It's scripted. There's a big difference.
Yeah, the body still takes impact. I watched Charlotte Flair do a backflip off and hit her knee. And I said, oh, that's not going to be good. That's why this is so important. Now, how can people, we got to wrap up here, how can people go to your podcast or your show and see this during the games to know if they need to continue betting, if they need to back off, if they, or just family members that want to check on the player that was hurt or just general fans?
Well, Twitter, at ProFootballDoc. Whenever there's an injury, often I get comments that, is anyone like me hitting refresh on Twitter, waiting for Pro Football Doc to weigh in, whenever there's a big injury. But the service at Sports Injury Central, sicscore.com. And we literally put out a health score. For example, we already have the health score of the Philadelphia Eagles with some issues on defense in their offensive line against the Dallas Cowboys opening night Thursday, literally scoring their injuries on offense, defense. And we have it broken down this year to run offense versus run defense. For example, if you're trying to decide between 2 running backs, it's important for fantasy. It's important to know the running back's health. But wouldn't it be nice to know what the health is of the offensive line for the running back, as well as the health of the defensive front 7 that they're playing against that week, right? And so we incorporate that, and literally we have a fantasy injury calculator that will take all the fantasy experts' projected points and then adjust that, index that based on the player's health, the O-line's health, and the run defense's health. And so sometimes you'll find something that a player that is projected to have 13 fantasy points, but he really is projected to have 18 based on indexing higher based on defensive injuries. Or sometimes a healthy player indexing lower because of offensive line injuries. So we have all that at Sports Injury Central, sicscore.com. And so those are the ways. And this year we have a new show that will be on Sports Grid. We're on VSiN as well. And it's called we used to do halftime injury chats live, and you could get it streaming on Twitter as well as the podcast during the week, YouTube and wherever. But now at halftime, we're going to talk about halftime lines with Steve Fezzik, one of the great gamblers out there. He won the Westgate Super Contest twice back to back. He won that contest. And we'll be analyzing what's actionable at halftime live from our war room, where we watch all 8 or 10 games on Sunday morning, our time on West Coast.
Doc, I want to thank you for joining us, and we're looking forward to an exciting, safe season. We hope everyone is safe and gets out there, but we know they're going to face some injuries because when they go in those speeds and those sizes, it's inevitable. But thank you, and again, we'll be watching and following to see what's going on this season and how well the teams are. Who's your pick for winning the Super Bowl this year?
Well, I don't know about picking winning the Super Bowl. I mean, I think Detroit is still a threat. Yes, they lost coordinators, but their defense was so banged up last year. If they can get into the playoffs with a healthy defense, they might make some noise. So we'll see what happens. Maybe some regression from the Ravens. The Chiefs, they fixed their left tackle problem. That Ohio State kid, first-round draft pick, is going to be healthy, even though he ruptured his patella tendon because based on side in position. So they may have fixed a problem. So not trying to take chalk there, but those are 2 teams that we're looking at. And there are already some teams that we put out futures on that may not be as healthy or good. Your Dolphins might be one of them. But anyways.
I'm going to predict one of the Florida teams is going to win the Super Bowl. I don't want to be biased and say Tampa, Jacksonville. And I called them the other day, the Tampa Jaguars or the Miami Bucks. I said, one of those teams is going to win the Super Bowl, so I'm going to stay in my hometown.
No offense to you. I know you're the Florida guy, but I will take the no on the 3 teams. We heard it here. I got the no on the 3 Florida teams. You got the yes. You know what? Being the kind of guy I am, I'll give you 2-to-1 odds. All right, I'll give you 2-to-1 odds.
We're going to be following you to see how halfway through the season that goes. Doc, thank you for joining us today. And we want to remind our listeners, this sports season, this NFL season, watch it. Our stations will be airing it. Other stations will be. We'll be talking about it, and we'll be bringing Doc back to get an upcap on everything. Thank you for listening. Have a great weekend and enjoy football this weekend. Live, work, shop, play, Florida.
You've been listening to The Joe Mullins Show. Find out more and engage with Joe by visiting the website, themullinscompanies.com. That's themullinscompanies.com.